Welcome to Live from Mars. My name is Alex. You may know me as Mars from TikTok, Instagram, this podcast, YouTube, wherever you found me. Welcome. You are here. You've made it. And Live from Mars is your weekly pop music podcast where we go into the latest and greatest releases as part of New Music Friday. We go through what's happening in the industry with the latest music news, and then we wrap things up with a deep dive of the week. And if this is your first time listening or your 22nd time listening, welcome back. I appreciate you guys tuning in. And as always, if you're not already following the podcast on your favorite podcast provider, Spotify, Apple Music, wherever you're taking this content in, if you could do me a huge favor, click the follow button, click the subscribe button. If you're watching this on YouTube, it means the absolute world to me. That is how we get the podcast to continue to grow and get really cool, exciting guests to come on here. So it means a lot. I appreciate all of your love and support. Now that that's out of the way, really fun stuff coming up in today's episode. We're going to go through the latest and greatest of this week's New Music Friday, the biggest release of which is Lorde's return to pop music with her new single, What Was That? I'll share some other favorites from this week's New Music Friday playlist, and then we're going to do a little deep dive into what the world of touring looks like post-Eras Tour. Because now that the Eras Tour has wrapped up, we know how monumental this tour was, not only for Taylor Swift's career, but also just the impact that has on consumer norms for touring, what fans are now expecting after seeing this gargantuan 3.5-hour long show with 40 plus songs performed almost every single night of the week. You're seeing the most notable tour of this week pop up is Katy Perry's Lifetimes Tour. I have a lot to say on that one, so stay tuned for that. But a little fun personal update. Last night, I got to celebrate hitting 100,000 followers over on TikTok with friends and family at a bar downtown. It was really exciting. It was a fun thing that I'd been wanting to do for months, maybe even a year plus now. I always said once we hit 100K, it was a cause for celebration. So had a fun night out last night, feeling a little bit of the repercussions this morning, but it's all good. Excited to sit down and talk through everything with you guys. But again, just wanted to take the moment to say thank you for all the love and support over these years. We're continuing to grow. We're continuing to do fun new things on this podcast, on short form, wherever you're consuming content. I'm really feeling excited about what's to come. So yeah, just wanted to throw a little personal thank you in there. And without any further ado, let's get into this week's New Music Friday. So kicking things off with this week's New Music Friday is Lorde's What Was That? Now, if you're not following what's been going on with Lorde, it's been 4 years since Lorde put out her last album in 2021. It was called Solar Power. It marked a very sharp pivot from the sounds that we were used to getting from Lorde. You have her first album, Pure Heroine, which introduced the then teenager to the global audience, having a smash hit like Royals and Tennis Court. Ribs has become one of Lorde's defining songs, despite never really being released as a full-on single. You then got in 2017 Lorde's magnum opus, at least to date, which is Melodrama. That is one of my favorite albums of all time, as evidenced by the vinyl that you are seeing behind me if you're watching this video. Melodrama really was a defining moment, not only for Lorde's career, but all of just pop music. It's one of the best pop albums released, I would argue, this millennium so far. Definitely one of the best electro synth pop records of our time. And then Solar Power in 2021 was Lorde returning to nature. I'm returning to just raw, beachy vibes. It's a very summer forward album. It's very stripped back. It's way more acoustic driven and actual instrumentation rather than the electro synth days of Pure Heroine and Melodrama. And it largely did not connect with the general public. There was no song off the album that made a huge commercial impact the way that Greenlight did on Melodrama, the way that Royals did on Pure Heroine. But yet again, Lorde has never really been this massive commercial behemoth of an artist the way that, you know, an Ariana Grande is a Taylor Swift. I'm trying to think of like who grew up in the pop world around the time Lorde debuted. But since Solar Power came out in 2021, Lorde has been making little tiny moves to reposition herself back to where she is right now. The largest of which has to be the Girl So Confusing remix with Charlie XCX, which I've continuously said was one of the best songs of 2024. It's one of my favorite collaborations of the last, I don't even know how many years. And it was a pairing that I wasn't necessarily expecting when the remix album of Brat first came out, but now having heard it and lived with it for almost a year, it feels like something that we've always had and truthfully always needed. Lorde is very diaristic in her songwriting on the Girl So Confusing remix. She is being incredibly vulnerable about her struggles with body dysmorphia and eating disorder, the backlash that she's gotten throughout her life, personal attacks on the way she even walks. It's very confessional. It was a really strong move back towards that grungier electronic music that Lorde introduced really to mainstream pop culture. That minimalist electropop sound was not really a thing before Royals. So coming back to this landscape, taking it back in her own hands is exactly what you're getting on the new single, What Was That? So a few weeks back, Lorde posted a teaser of this What Was That single, playing the hook in the main chorus and then the post-chorus drop in a TikTok video of her in Washington Square Park. The clip went immediately pretty viral, and that is what the first taste of What Was That was. Going back a few days to Tuesday of this past week, Lorde sent out a text to her New York City fans saying, "Meet me at the park very simply." Fans were very quick to put together that the park, of all of the parks that are in New York City, was Washington Square Park, because that's where the original post was from. And Lorde fans basically turned Washington Square Park into a Lorde meetup because it completely flooded the park. The pictures that I've seen of the amount of people that were in Washington Square Park for this Lorde meetup is insane, to the point that the police shut it down because it was too much of a hazard and Lorde hadn't gotten necessary permits to have this meetup. That's like it's so ridiculous, but whatever. She said that she wasn't going to end up coming, but she actually ended up making an appearance around 9 p.m. Tuesday night in the park and played the song in its full form for the fans who were still around. Now, interestingly, this entire thing was the backbone of the music video that we got for What Was That, where it shows Lorde biking throughout the east side of New York City and ending up in Washington Square Park to dance to the new song with her fans. Here's a quick snippet of What Was That so you can hear it if you haven't already.
Since I was 17, I gave you everything. Now we wake from a dream. Well, baby, what was that?
Now, comparing and contrasting What Was That to Lorde's prior work is an interesting little thing to take a look into, because while it may feel incredibly familiar, it is actually a blending of different worlds rather than just focusing on one. The way that I look at an album like Pure Heroine is a much more minimalist production style where Lorde's vocals are very much coming to the forefront. In the way that they're produced, you hear the different harmonies there, the vocal stacks. It's very much now what seems to be the norm in the music industry. A lot of artists have been doing this now. Those artists have been directly inspired by Lorde, so now it feels normal, but Lorde was one of the first to make this style mainstream. I've seen most people say that What Was That reminds them of melodrama, that we are back in the melodrama era. Melodrama to me is more maximalist, more cinematic, more musical, more colorful than an album like Pure Heroine. And that's exactly what Lorde set out to do when creating it. So this new single feels like a meeting of those two worlds, because the songwriting here is visual and is Lorde's confessional style of songwriting, where she's bringing back past memories, but the memories are still haunting Lorde. And you can very much tell that through her vocal delivery, especially in the second verse. What Was That is definitely a mixture of Pure Heroine and melodrama, but it leaves me and pretty much every other listener just dying to hear what else is coming from this upcoming Lorde album. But we still have no insight into when that album is coming. Needless to say, people are incredibly excited that Lorde is back. What Was That has been performing pretty decently on streaming. It's not necessarily crushing any records the way that an Espresso did when it first came out in Flowers, but it is performing pretty decently on both US and global Spotify. On its second day on Saturday, it peaked at number 5 on the global Spotify charts with over 4 million streams, which is huge. What Was That also became Lorde's first #1 single on the US Spotify charts since Royals almost 11 years ago. So it's off to an incredibly strong start. I'm really excited to see how the general public picks up on this single. It was sent for immediate airplay, so we're going to see how it performs on radio. I'll keep you guys updated on how its streaming numbers are continuing to grow, if so I thought this would be a fun activity. Let's go through and rank Lorde's 4 lead singles to date. You've got Royals off of Pure Heroine, you have Green Light off of Melodrama, you have Solar Power off of the album of the same name, and now What Was That? Fourth, I'm going to put Solar Power. This shouldn't come as a huge surprise, just given how much of a sonic outlier the song, the album, really all of this era was for Lorde. It's not that Lorde sounds bad on it by any means. It's a really strong song. It has some really great lyrics in it, and the production is very earthy and organic and feels alive. But just thinking of the era as a whole and how little of an impact it had, I'm going to put Solar Power at number 4. Number 3, I'm going to give to What Was That? I know that may come as a little bit of a surprise, but given how strong Royals and Greenlight are, What Was That feels like the right place to go at number 3. I think What Was That is a really strong return for Lorde, but it's much more a return than a reinvention. She's not offering something net new the way that she did on a song like Royals, breaking the norms of what was really happening in pop music at the time. The same thing with Greenlight, taking that to the next level by making it more adventurous and more cinematic and more euphoric. It's a good Lorde song, but there's so much more that she's capable of in bringing this fresh new perspective to her music or trying something out new in her songwriting styles. This feels like a classic Lorde song, and that's not bad at all, but it's not necessarily showing me a new side of her artistry that she has developed and really mastered over the last 4 years since Solar Power came out. So for now, I'm going to put What Was That at number 3, but granted, it just came out. Let's give it some more time to breathe. I'll let you know if my thoughts change on that position. I think it's going to be hard to do that, though, because number 2 is going to Royals. This was the song that broke Lorde into the mainstream. It is such a tentpole piece of music in the 2010s. Before Royals came out, there was a really sharp trend in pop music of tapping into EDM and driving a little bit more into dubstep. You saw that on Britney Spears' Hold It Against Me. I'm talking Rihanna's Loud. Lorde's Royals is kind of in direct opposition to the sound of pop music at the time, where everything else was going super maximalist, big clear hooks, over the top production, basically creating a party every which way you turn. Lorde's Royals is the complete opposite of that. It is incredibly minimalist. Her vocals are the star of the entire show, bringing vocal stacks into mainstream. I love the songwriting, the way that she is calling out the upper class in this class divide. I think it's just such a fun thing for a 16, 17-year-old to be writing about. It comes off with such a sense of maturity, but nothing can take away the fact that Greenlight is Lorde's best lead single of the 4. No question about it in my mind. It is an absolute joyride from start to finish. It's a complete musical explosion of the senses. The visual storytelling, the music video that goes with it, the whole melodrama aesthetic. It's also one of Lorde's best known songs because of how strong it is. So it's a very clear spot for number 1 for me. But that's my thoughts. I'm curious to know what you guys think of the 4. How would you rate Lorde's 4 singles? Drop a comment, let me know. But that is everything on What Was That, but I do want to share with you guys some other highlights of this week's New Music Friday that I came across when I was going through the playlist. I go through each week's New Music Friday playlist, so you don't have to, and these are some of my favorite songs I found this week. You can find all of my picks in my playlist Life on Mars, a New Music Friday playlist. It's on my Spotify profile, go check it out. But these were some other songs that I loved this week. Joe Jonas has a new song out called Heart by Heart. It is the 3rd single to be released off his upcoming album, Music for People Who Believe in Love, that is due in May.
I know your heart by heart.
Heart by Heart is the follow-up single to Work It Out, which was released last July. And then last October, Joe dropped the single What This Could Be, which made my top 50 songs of 2024. I know it may sound crazy that a Joe Jonas song made this guy's top 50 songs of 2024, but it is so majestic, it is so thoughtful and nostalgic sounding. I absolutely love it. And Heart by Heart continues that trend. I am really liking this one too. Heart by Heart goes a little bit more towards like 90s inspired arena rock per se. It feels more alive, more driven than the dream pop of What This Could Be. Joe also has a really strong voice. I don't know why it's not talked about more because his vocal tone is one of my favorites that I listen to. The songwriting also on Heart by Heart is deeply introspective. Heart by Heart is also a more reflective moment for Joe Jonas, so I'm excited to see how this sound continues to evolve when we hear his album out next month. Another song I enjoyed this week was Benson Boone's new single, Mystical Magical.
Moonbeam ice cream, taking off your blue jeans, dancing at the movies, 'cause it feels so mystical, magical, baby, 'cause once you know.
I don't know why Benson Boone gets the amount of hate that he does. I don't fully understand it, and I am curious to know if you are a diehard Benson Boone hater, please let me know where that hatred comes from, because what I'm seeing is somebody who is incredibly lively and engaging when he's giving live performances. He has a pretty sick voice, especially those upper register notes that he can go for. I think the issue that I may have with him is that it feels a little bit more like Freddie Mercury cosplay than who Benson Boone is actually as an artist, who he is outside of his inspirations. There's very clear draws, obviously, from Freddie Mercury, Harry Styles. I want to see some more consistency in his public appearance as well. I feel like I remember seeing him mention that he's not trying to like sell his body and his abs for his music career, but then the album cover has him shirtless. So just trying to see where he is as an artist, what he's trying to represent as both a musician and a celebrity. But Benson Boone has over 52 million monthly listeners on Spotify. He is the 41st most streamed artist in the world. Beautiful Things has been streamed over 2 billion times. It's one of the biggest singles of the 2020s decade. I also enjoyed Sorry I'm Here for Someone Else when that dropped. Slow It Down and The Stars, Ghost Town, I didn't love those nearly as much, so I'm looking to see how Mystical Magical connects with audiences because it's very clearly wearing its Physical by Olivia Newton-John influence on its sleeve. The chorus here is following the exact same melody as Physical, so that is personally the draw for me. I am curious to know what you guys think of this one, what it means for the sound of Benson's upcoming album, American Heart, so let me know what your thoughts are on that. And then the last song I'm going to highlight is Carousel by Samia. Samia is an indie singer-songwriter who really popped off from her album The Baby in 2020. I haven't listened to a ton of her music before, but I have seen some of my friends mention her name, and I'm really glad that I recognized her name on this week's New Music Friday playlist and gave Carousel a listen because I loved this song. I did not know at all what to expect from it. It starts off incredibly acoustic and very intimate, and then halfway through the song it kind of explodes into this more rock-driven track. It reminded me of a Billie Eilish Happier Than Ever moment, but not to that level of intensity, just a similar kind of structure where it builds and goes from 0 to 100 but you're not really expecting it to. If you're a fan of artists like Maggie Rogers and Clairo and you haven't yet checked out Samia, definitely give her a listen because I'm going to be doing that exact same thing in the coming days. I'll let you guys know if I have any other songs of hers that I recommend, but definitely worth checking out Carousel. And that is our New Music Friday rundown. Let's kick into this week's deep dive topic. I have a lot to say about the state of touring. So the state of pop music touring in 2025 is a very interesting place to be because we're living in a post-Eras Tour era. And it's kind of crazy to think about the way that the Eras Tour rewired fans' perceptions of live events, of what fans get when they pay hundreds of dollars to attend their favorite artist's show. And it really rewired what pop concerts even are. An artist would traditionally release an album and then go on tour to promote it. And the way that an artist would pay the label back for all of the money and marketing that was put into releasing their album was through touring. So an artist essentially would put out the album, go and tour it. The touring would then pay back the label and it would make money so that way the artist can go back into the studio and create another album to then go on another tour, keep doing this cycle over and over again. But the pandemic changed everything. For over a year and a half, there was no tour. For over a year and a half, artists didn't have to worry necessarily about the live element of putting on a show and concert sales and tickets and merch and all of the madness that comes from touring, and instead could use that time to focus on output, could focus that time on creating new music that eventually they'd be able to go tour. And you saw that with an artist like Taylor, who created Folklore and Evermore during the pandemic, which were albums that were pretty much made because she did not have to tour them. These albums are not made for stadiums, although she did do a pretty good job of bringing them to life in a stadium. But albums like Folklore and Evermore would do a lot better if Taylor was performing in a theater acoustically with a guitar and a microphone, the way that she performed Betty at the 2020 CMAs. But now more so than ever before, touring is a huge career moment. It's merch, it's legacy, it's TikTok content. It's exclusive surprise songs that are only performed for that one night in their exact form. Each and every show becoming a unique cultural experience for those thousands of fans in attendance. And if you're a pop star in 2025 and you're going on tour, you're pretty much living in the shadow of Taylor's Eras Tour because it completely changed fans' expectations as to what they're getting from a live show. Ticket prices are only getting more expensive, fees are becoming astronomically high, and you're seeing with artists who are putting on these shows, you have to give a reason for fans to feel like they're getting that value of the ticket price they're spending. And one of the biggest examples of how the post-Eras Tour touring world is shaping up is happening right now as we speak with Katy Perry's Lifetimes Tour. And honestly, the reaction has been nothing short of messy. Now, if you've been following my content for a little bit, you may have seen my reaction video to Katy Perry's album called 143 that dropped in September. It was one of the roughest listens I've had to a pop album in I don't even know how long. To this day, 7 months since this album came out, and every single day I check my emails for my YouTube notifications and I see another Katy cat fighting me on how this album is fantastic and all of the issues I had with it were not valid. It is the most hate that I think I've ever gotten on a video is from my review of 143. And taking all of that out of the equation, this tour is incredibly messy so far. This is Katy's first global tour in 8 years. And the concept is super ambitious. It's video game inspired, where Katy Perry is essentially playing this half human, half robot character called KP143. She is battling an evil AI named Mainframe. It's colorful, it's weird, it's full of pretty wild set pieces and costumes, but the execution is where things get a little rocky. This tour was originally positioned as a tour to promote the 143 album. However, because this album was severely critically panned, sold pretty terribly, did not have a big single to its name, it had a ton of controversy surrounding Katy Perry's choice of producers and writing partners on this album, it was essentially repositioned into what the Lifetimes Tour now is, which is basically a greatest hits tour for Katy Perry. And I'm not knocking her for the idea of a greatest hits tour, because that's what a lot of artists are doing right now, especially in the post-Eras world, because the Eras tour was essentially a greatest hits tour for Taylor Swift. And it was genius, because the amount of new fans that Taylor was able to bring in from the re-records, from Folklore and Evermore into Midnights and Tortured Poets and the Eras Tour is a case study that will be discussed in pop music for probably the next 50 plus years. However, for Katy Perry, I do not think that this will have the same notoriety, and it won't be for the same good reasons. From the few shows that Katy has done so far, critics and fans across the internet and social media have been dragging Katy for what feels incredibly robotic. No pun intended, but it just feels like AI, pretty much. The narrative is fun, it's creative, but it's a little bit all over the place. It's almost like a Saturday Night Live skit that just is devoid of all punchlines. Clips from opening night went viral for the wrong reasons. The choreography across the entire show feels a little bit strange. So there's a moment, I believe, during Part of Me where she is laying on the floor just kicking her leg up and down. Some of the choreography during a moment like E.T. is a little cringe. It feels a little unrehearsed. There's a moment where I saw her like up in the air on strings, running across people's backs, but missing the people's backs that she's running across. Maybe she shouldn't have gone to space and used that time to be working on this tour a little bit more. I'm sorry, I know that sounds harsh, but like, I'm calling a spade here. But what's really interesting here is that Katy is trying on paper to do exactly what she should be doing. It's a giant spectacle. You're getting the visuals, you're getting the sci-fi theme, you're getting the choose your own adventure moment of each show, where every different performance will have 2 songs chosen by the audience in a fan vote, which I actually think is a really good idea. You know, Taylor for every Eras Tour show did 2 surprise songs, one on piano, one on guitar, but Taylor chose them and you had absolutely no idea what she was going to perform that night. By letting the fans in the room choose what song they want to hear live in that moment is just a fun way of making this moment feel way more alive. But what's missing here is the emotional anchor that made the Eras Tour work so well. With the Eras Tour, Taylor made you feel every act, every costume change. There was a game made by fans where they could essentially bet on what they thought Taylor would be wearing for each show and what the surprise song was, because fans were so emotionally invested in the color of the snake on the Reputation bodysuit. These outfits became arguably as big as some of the songs in a way. The crowd in Miami losing their minds when they saw the new Reputation bodysuit says it all. Every era, every outfit, every song choice, every interaction was made for the, more than all of that, it matters to the story Taylor is telling. Whereas for Katy, critics are kind of saying it feels like you're watching a cartoon that you're just not so emotionally invested in, where it's bright and flashy and colorful, but it's kind of hollow. And that right there is the real impact of the Eras Tour on pop touring. Fans now expect both a giant show and a deep emotional connection to the performance. It's not enough these days to have a ton of background dancers. It's not enough to have crazy lights and spectacles and fireworks and all of this. An artist needs to make the fan feel like they are part of the story, like they are part of something deeply personal to the artist and everybody else in that room, to create a community within each and every show. But outside of Katy Perry, there's an artist who did this incredibly well in the aftermath of the Eras Tour, and that goes to Sabrina Carpenter, who had one of the biggest years in music last year. While Sabrina's been performing each night of the Short and Sweet Tour, she's learning from her time opening for Taylor on the Eras Tour by making each and every show feel truly special for the fans that are there for that show. Whether she's in New York City or LA for 3 nights, 5 nights, whatever it is, each individual show has something that a fan can wear like a badge of honor. What Sabrina's doing at each show is debuting a fun colored outfit, and fans are excited to see which colored lingerie Sabrina will be donning that night. similar to what color bodysuit Taylor would open up the Eras Tour Lover era with. Sabrina also did this surprise song kind of thing each night, but taking that even a step further, every night's performance of Juno has become a huge viral moment, and that right there is the secret sauce of the Short and Sweet tour. If you're not familiar with Juno, the song on Sabrina's album Short and Sweet, there's a lyric which mentions how she wants to try out some fun new positions, and then every night during the Short and Sweet tour, she would do a different position and the crowd goes wild. Some of them will be themed to the location that she's in. Some of them are just fun out of the box ideas. It's a little promiscuous, it's a little controversial, which only helps the moment go viral. So she's sprinkling in unique performances. She's giving an exclusive position for each tour show. It makes every night feel different, where you as a fan can wear the badge of honor that says, I was at the Short and Sweet tour night 1 in LA, the same way that someone at the Eras tour can say, oh, my 2 surprise songs where I did something bad in Getaway Car. Another artist who's doing this is Dua Lipa on her Radical Optimism tour by doing a unique surprise song each night. So this trend is continuing. And also, this trend is not a new thing with the Eras tour. There are plenty of artists who have been touring for decades that will do a special song for a special audience each night. Taylor just took it to the next level, and now you're seeing that cascade down. What I'm really interested in seeing is how Beyoncé, who's kicking off her Cowboy Carter tour this week, is going to interact with any of the things we just spoke about. And knowing that Taylor and Beyoncé are always in similar conversation as the biggest pop stars of our generation, I'm curious to see how Beyoncé is going to make this Cowboy Carter tour feel unique for each show. The interesting thing about the Cowboy Carter tour as of right now is that a lot of people have been posting photos of their seats being upgraded because the tickets have not been selling, I don't think, as well as many expected them to. Despite Cowboy Carter taking home Album of the Year at the Grammys this year, despite it debuting at #1, despite Texas Hold'em being a huge single for Beyoncé, ticket sales have been a little bit softer than most anticipated for Beyoncé, because Beyoncé is Beyoncé. She is a touring legend. She is a live performing expert. If you have not watched her Coachella performance on Netflix, Homecoming, I encourage you to do so, because I watch it every single month, because it is the best live performance I have ever watched. But because of the softer ticket sales, it raises a few interesting questions that we should talk about. Has Beyoncé in some ways made herself too untouchable? She spent the last decade plus, pretty much since the release of her self-titled album in 2013, reshaping the way we think about music and release strategies and music as a proper and true art form. In a singles-driven landscape, Beyoncé has been making a huge effort to create albums rather than just singles. She centered her work around Black culture and shining light on underappreciated Black artists and their contributions to shaping the way we know music today. Simply said, Beyoncé is redefining the way we look at artistry. And for over a decade now, she has not been playing the traditional pop star game, where each album comes with a big promo tour like you saw Lady Gaga on every talk show, every interview for her Mayhem album, and doing these big splashy performances to get her name out there, releasing killer high-budget music videos. Beyoncé didn't really put out any visuals for the most part for the Cowboy Carter or Renaissance eras, other than live performances here and there. Beyoncé does not do any interviews. She's always remained a part of the cultural conversation. But in 2025, is there a downside to that distance? The way that pop music and consumption habits have evolved over the last few years, Beyoncé is not an artist who's constantly on TikTok engaging with her fans. She has always been this elusive figure behind the curtain like the Wizard of Oz. But I worry, because she's been so elusive in private for so many years now, the casual fan has maybe lost a little interest in who Beyoncé is and what she's sharing about her life, therefore not necessarily feeling the need to buy a ticket to the Cowboy Carter tour. Has Beyoncé, by intentionally distancing herself, staying above the noise, risked becoming almost mythological to the point of being unreachable? And if so, doesn't that make it a lot harder to sell out a stadium each night? Combining all of what I just discussed with the fact that ticket prices are still really expensive. I think I paid around $250 a ticket. Granted, I live in a major city. I have spent around the same amount of money for other artist shows in the same exact section. It's a section that I always return to because I know that it has like club level access and it's offering a good view. But I was curious, and I went on Ticketmaster the other day to see if I could potentially upgrade my tickets given these lower price cuts. And tickets in the 100s close to the stage are still selling for $600, $800. And there's a lot of them available that are not even resale, that are still first-hand tickets. As we've discussed, ticket prices have only gone up, and you really saw the resale market boom with the Eras Tour. People spending thousands of dollars on an Eras Tour ticket. And artists deserve to get paid for their work. An artist is going out on stage and performing for you for hours on end. It's fair to charge a premium for a tour ticket. But if you're not seeing these tickets sell sell through at a certain point, turn off dynamic pricing, lower these prices to get fans in the room, because once they're in the room, a fan can create the viral moment you need. The fans will do the marketing for you. So none of this is taking away from Beyonce's brilliance. But it does make you wonder if we're seeing a major shift here, where if a fan is going to be spending hundreds of dollars, if not $1,000 on a ticket to see your show, you gotta give them hundreds of dollars, if not $1,000 worth of value. So I'm very curious to see what Beyonce does. I'll be covering her tour debut in the next few days. So if you're not already following on TikTok or Instagram, I'll be posting a ton of content surrounding the Cowboy Carter tour there. So hit the follow button for that. But I'm very curious to know what you guys are thinking about the state of touring right now, because some of you may be going to smaller, more intimate shows in theaters, and that really drives home the artist-fan connection. Others, like myself, may really only go to a few shows a year because the artists that we love are performing in stadiums, and it isn't as much about the fan-artist connection. It's more so about the experience, the spectacle that you're getting. So let me know in the comments what your thoughts are on touring right now. What's a show that you've seen that you really enjoyed? What's a show that you saw you weren't in love with, and why? I'm very curious to know, so sound off in the comments there. And that is our episode of Live from Mars. Again, a huge thank you to everybody for listening and tuning in today. If you are not already following and subscribed to the podcast on your favorite provider, please make sure you do so. And if you're feeling extra generous, throw Live from Mars a 5-star rating. It means the absolute world to me. I hope you guys enjoyed. Make sure you're following at Vinyl by Mars on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube for more content just like this. And I will see you all next week for another new episode. See you all then.